Grounding my jet over a ghost Master Chief, Lieutenant Cmdr Ryan Cole shouted over the wind palm, slapping the FA-18's fuselage as if to prove it's solid. Diagnostics are clean. We're not canceling a sortie because your clipboard got nervous. Master Chief Julia Barrett didn't look up. She pinched a grease pencil between forefinger and thumb, drew a small mark on a hydraulic line at the wing root, and waited for the spray of rain to pass before she spoke. "Phantom bleeds don't log until they're real," she said, calm as a plumb line. This one's whispering. 50 feet above, behind armored glass on the island Jenners. Marcus Hale lowered his binoculars. The deck below was a crowded chessboard. Yellow shirts, flashing tow bars, clanking a squall line, smearing the horizon into slate. In that chaos, Julia Barrett moved like a metronome. No wasted steps, no theatrical flourishes, no fight with the weather, just deliberate hands and the quiet authority of someone who had taught herself to hear machines breathe. Hale had seen that kind of stillness in the cockpit, on the ground, and in operating rooms where seconds cost lives. It always meant the same thing: pay attention. Cole didn't. He grinned for the ordnance crew and turned his voice into a lecture. "We're Blue Water, Master Chief. Ops tempo's the tempo. You want green across the board? Write a poem. We fly." The chuckles he earned blew thin in the wind, but they were enough. He saw a faded flight suit, gray in the shoulders, and mistook years for rust. He saw a maintenance log and mistook expertise for hesitation. Barrett capped her pen and traced the line again with 2 fingers, eyes narrowing not in doubt but in focus. The temperature shift from the squall had changed the feel of the hose. The connector vibed on the edge of confidence. She spoke without looking at Cole. "Pull the bird, swap the accumulator, and check the return side. 10 minutes now or 4 hours later." The storm had rolled in faster than forecast, a corrugated wall of rain chewing up the light. Ops had already stacked departures to beat it. The deck crew had already stretched themselves to make the numbers. Cole felt the pressure like an audience and mistook it for purpose. He jabbed a finger at the status board. "Green is green. We don't cancel because somebody thinks they heard a whisper." Hale let the binoculars hang and listened to the wind in the rigging. He knew the backdrop: a deployment schedule written in ink, a ready room full of pilots measuring themselves against each other's call signs, a flight deck where rank could talk louder than wisdom if you let it. He also knew the cast. Lieutenant Cmdr Ryan Cole Sharp, fast, addicted to clean data. Master Chief Julia Barrett, slower on paper, relentless in the details that kept men alive. One believed the jet until it lied. The other assumed it already had and was trying to tell the truth in a language most people no longer bothered to learn. Lightning ticked on the horizon. The rain hardened. The Hornet's canopy glistened like wet stone. Barrett finally lifted her eyes to Cole, not angry, not pleading, steady. "Sir, I'm telling you before the jet does." Hale exhaled decision settling in his bones. The storm outside had arrived. The storm on deck was only starting. The rain arrived like a wall. In one sweep, the deck went from noisy to brutal spray, lifting off the bow. Tie-downs, snapping taut yellow shirts, squinting through needles of water. The first voice to cut the weather wasn't on the deck at all. "Mayday, Mayday, Viper 2. Multiple hydraulic failures, primary and secondary gone, gears not responding." The transmission was tight-clipped and far away. Everything moved at once. Landing signal officers leaned into their mics, calling headings and glide slope updates in rapid-fire numbers. Aft, a junior crewman slipped, caught himself on a chalk, and stared at the meatball lights as if they could answer for him. Lieutenant Cmdr Ryan Cole raised his headset halfway, then froze eyes on the status board. Mind blanked by the thing he had sworn couldn't happen. The Hornet that should have been routine was now a wounded weight in bad air. Master Chief Julia Barrett didn't shout. She touched the shoulder of a deckhand, took the spare headset from his collar, and plugged into the auxiliary loop as naturally as setting a wrench in a tray. "Maintenance to pry fly," she said, level as a spirit level. Passing direct to Viper 2, General Marcus Hale, watching from the island, didn't need to clear it. The room around him already understood whose voice the pilot needed. "Viper 2, this is Barrett on the deck," she said, as if they had all the time in the world. "Confirm you've got residual pressure on the utility side. A beat of static. Utility is bleeding off. Flight controls heavy. Gear still indicating up. I'm high and dirty on the approach. Copy. Do not cycle anything." Barrett replied, reach under your left knee panel. Pull the manual override for the gear safety. You'll get a red you don't like, ignore it. Next, crack the emergency nitrogen bottle. 2 seconds only. That's a blowdown, not a hammer. Feel for the kick in your pedals. On deck, the LSOs adapted their calls, shifting to match the plan she was building. Come right to. Work it. Don't chase it. Barrett never stepped on them. She filled the space between numbers. Viper 2. You'll get half a lock, then a burp. Stay with it. Let gravity do the slow work. If you feel a shudder, that's the doors, don't fight it. Cole's lips parted closed again. The words he had used on Barrett an hour earlier, ghost clipboard, evaporated in the rain. He watched her eyes, not the storm. Her hands, not the drama. She wasn't improvising. She was reading a checklist she had written into her bones years ago, line by line. Barrett, I've got, Drag, the pilot said, voice lower, steadier. Feels like one main is down. That's enough to save your life, Barrett answered. Hook down. Keep it under 150. Don't flare to pretty arrive. She looked to the arresting gear crew. Rig 3, make it honest. They nodded, already setting tension. The Hornet slid out of the weather like a bruised bird nose, bobbing hook glinting. It wasn't elegant. It was correct. Barrett's cadence never wavered. You're lined up. Tiny left. Hold what you've got. Eyes long. Commit. The LSO's last call, power, power, come on, rode the wind, and then metal met metal. The hook found the wire with a scream and a shower of sparks. The jet slammed, gripped, and bled its fury into the cable until it stopped short, centered on the deck alive. For a heartbeat, the storm was just rain. The klaxon didn't sound. The LSO shack exhaled. A junior sailor laughed once too loud, then covered his mouth as if he'd broken something. Cole took a step toward Barrett and stopped because there was nothing to add to a perfect sentence. Barrett lifted her mic one last time. Viper 2, kill your engines. You're home. She unplugged, handed the headset back to the kid she'd borrowed it from, and began coiling the cord to keep it from pooling in the water. General Marcus Hale watched the smallest motions, the way she gave order to align before it could tangle, the way she returned a deck to itself after it had tasted panic, and thought not for the first time that quiet hands had once again written the difference between a close call and a condolence letter. Barrett kept the cadence steady because cadence was control. Viper 2 selects secondary bus override now. There was a hitch of static, then the pilot's low reply. Secondary bus. Overridden. Good, Master Chief Julia Barrett, said the deck wind, tearing past her mic. You've bypassed the bad logic. Next step, charge your emergency nitrogen bottle for 2 seconds only. Not 3, 2. Then hands back on the throttles and fly the feel. The landing signal officers adjusted to her rhythm numbers, dovetailing with her short, plain sentences. On center line, a hair low, bring it. Barrett never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Calm travels farther than shouting on a wet deck. Viper 2, the cockpit will throw a red you can't trust. It's wrong. Verify by behavior, not by bulb. If the pedals kick, the doors are breathing. If the nose feels heavy, that's drag from one main extended. Don't chase, pretty arrive. Lieutenant Cmdr Ryan Cole stood 3 paces behind her, headset loose in his hand, the rain silvering his sleeves. He wanted to help and found nothing to add. The checklist he knew had lines. The checklist Barrett carried lived in muscle and memory. General Marcus Hale watched from the island and saw the thing you can't train quickly, the old professional closing the distance between fear and action with ordinary words perfectly placed. Viper 2, confirm a down and dirty, feel slight buffet. Affirm. The pilot answered, breath, finally settling. I've got weight, I've got drag, hooks down, copy, hold 145, no flare. Fly it onto the wire, Barrett said, as if she were asking him to pass the salt. She turned to the arresting gear crew. Set 3 tight, give him an honest catch. Heads nodded, hands moved. The deck, moments ago, a scatter of haste aligned to her sentence. Out of the rain came the Hornet, crooked by weather and damage, but somehow purposeful. The ball drifted, then steadied as the pilot stopped correcting for what he saw and started flying, what he felt. Barrett's voice, even and small, threaded in his ear. Tiny right. Hold it. Good. Commit. Metal met metal with a scream you could feel in your teeth, and then the FA-18 was no longer a problem in the sky, but a weight on the deck clawed to a stop by the 3-wire. The shock slammed the hook, sparked the cable sang. Then abruptly, the only sound was rain. Someone laughed once and swallowed it. Cole removed his headset slowly, as if loud motion might break the spell. Viper 2, pull both throttles to idle. Kill the motors. You're home, Barrett said, and disconnected. She handed the auxiliary set back to the deck, hand-coiled the line so it wouldn't take a heel, and stepped clear of the foul line. The pilot's canopy popped. A gloved thumb lifted in the gray. The LSOs let out a breath that sounded like gratitude. Cole found his voice. Master Chief, that was maintenance, she answered gently, already scanning the jet's knees and belly for hard signs of the bleed that had started the argument. No triumph, no sermon. Just the next right task. General Marcus Hale came down the ladder with that stiff, deliberate gait old flyers keep. He didn't clap her shoulder or make a speech. He simply looked at the quiet order she had returned to the deck and nodded once, the kind of nod you give a peer. Around them, sailors started moving again slower, sure, as if a room that had been too loud had remembered how to listen. The wire was still humming when the tow tractor nosed in, and the LSOs waved the deck back to breathing. General Marcus Hale did not head for the pilot. He stepped to the island phone, asked for the watch officer, and said 6 quiet words that changed the temperature of a ship. Pull Master Chief Barrett's record now. A minute later, a soaked yeoman arrived with a rugged tablet tucked under his arm, lungs burning from the climb. Hale scrolled past boilerplate until the lines that mattered settled on the glass. Name Barrett, Julia A., rate Master Chief Aviation Maintenance Technician. Former billet, Senior Crew Chief, Navy Flight Demonstration Squadron. Special Qualifications, Hydraulic Systems, SME, NATOPS Emergency Supplement Contributor, FA-18, Catastrophic Hydraulic Failure. Protocol Author, Fleet Adoption Complete. Below it sat the unglamorous ledger of years phase inspections, mishap board findings, depot trials. The long, quiet work from which checklists are born. Hale closed the cover and came down the ladder with the deliberate gait of a man who understands audiences. He stopped in the non-skid puddles directly in front of Master Chief Julia Barrett, who was already tracing a fingertip along a damp fitting under Viper 2's belly, looking for the weep that had started an argument and ended a crisis. The general placed his heels together, lifted his right hand, and rendered a salute so plain it felt like bedrock. No words, no fanfare, just the oldest respect in the service. Master Chief, he said, when he dropped his hand, the wind flattening his flight jacket. The procedure you wrote just saved a crewman. Thank you for your work. Around them, sailors stilled, then moved again with that peculiar care people use in chapels. Barrett offered a small nod and nothing more. For her, the job was not finished until the leak source told the truth. Lieutenant Cmdr Cole arrived half a step behind Hale and stopped as if the foul line had teeth. His helmet hung from 2 fingers. The other hand opened and closed, empty of arguments. When he spoke, his voice had none of the deck swagger it carried an hour earlier. Master Chief Barrett. I was wrong, he said, meeting her eye and holding it. I treated your inspection like drag on my timeline. I didn't listen. You kept my wingman alive. I'm sorry, and I'm grateful. Barrett straightened, wiped rainwater and hydraulic mist from her sleeve with the indifferent efficiency of habit, and spared him a steady look. We're in the same fight, Lieutenant Commander, she said. Respect the cautions you can't see. They're the ones that bite. She tipped her chin toward the Hornet's knee. And sign the gripe that got us here. The fleet learns faster when the paper tells the story. Hale let the exchange stand. Then for the deck to hear, he gave the lesson in 1 sentence. Rank gives you authority. Competence earns you trust. Fly like the first listen, like the second. He handed the tablet back to the yeoman and walked the catwalk toward the island without looking over his shoulder, sure the ship would follow the example he'd just set. Behind him, Cole slid his helmet under his arm, the way students do when class is in session. Aye, Master Chief, he said softer and reached for a grease pencil. Barrett bent again to the fitting, listening with her fingertips, as the rain eased from needles to mist, the deck's adrenaline bleeding down to something steadier, order restored by an old protocol, and a quiet voice that knew when to use it. By evening, the squall had moved off the bow, but the change that mattered stayed on deck. Master Chief Julia Barrett didn't linger for congratulations. She wiped the fitting dry closed out the discrepancy and scheduled a follow-up inspection. The crew mirrored her tempo. Plane captains who usually sprinted to make launch windows built in 5 extra minutes to listen to their jets. Pilots like Lieutenant Cmdr Ryan Cole came to the line, early helmets under arms, and asked Barrett's people, "Anything you don't like?" The answer mattered now, and it sounded like teamwork instead of delay. Within a week, the maintenance bay carried a new, unofficial name, Chief's Bench. Nobody painted a sign. The title lived in behavior. Briefs lost the swagger and found the checklist. Pre-flight slowed by a breath or two, and oddly sorties flowed smoother. Across the strike group, NATO's pushed a quiet update. The hydraulic failure procedure now included a small footnote protocol developed and empirically verified by MCPO Julia Barrett. No photo, no ceremony, a line of print built to outlast weather and memory. General Marcus Hale let the deck write the sermon. He heard fewer arguments about paperwork and more questions that began with "show me." Barrett noticed nothing except better work. She kept the same calm seat at the same battered desk, still last to leave the bay. When Cole stopped by with coffee, she took it with a nod and sent him to brief a junior pilot on false red lights and the art of flying the feel. The ship felt steadier, not because the sea had grown kind, but because the people on it had. For those who've worn a uniform or stood watch beside someone who did the lesson, plain respect is earned by competence, under pressure, not by rank volume or swagger. Standards endure when they're practiced, not proclaimed. On that deck, Julia Barrett's name became shorthand for the kind of quiet authority that keeps airplanes and people coming home.